Should I try to create seasonal bundles or seasonal private label products to sell on Amazon? Should I only focus on home run opportunities, or should I be happy to have average selling products as well? We talk about these topics and more in this episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast.
This is the Amazon Seller Podcast, hosted by multi-million-dollar Amazon sellers helping you launch your private label business to the next level. Find us on amazingfreedom.com or subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and YouTube.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast. We are excited to bring you a topic today that we have tried to communicate quite a bit to the Amazing Freedom Amazon Sellers Facebook group members because we think it's a great opportunity for those who are struggling to get started with private label or even just, getting started selling on Amazon. And before we get into that, I want to ask you if you have checked out the free private label course that we now have available. The Smart Private Label course is an awesome foundational look at the private label process, and you can get registered for it for free by visiting amazingfreedom.com. Visit amazingfreedom.com and register for the Smart Private Label course. We have already gotten some really great feedback from those who have gone through the course, and I'm confident it is going to be a tremendous help for those of you who are looking for some ways to cut the learning curve when you're creating your business. So in today's episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast, we're going to talk about seasonal products, how you might work your way up to private label if you're not quite ready for it yet, and some strategies and tactics that you can utilize and really just take advantage of short-term opportunities in the marketplace. So Andy, I know that a lot of people in our group are doing seasonal type opportunities or bundles and taking advantage of that. Why don't you just go over your opinion on creating seasonal products, if you think it's a good idea to do seasonal products that aren't even private label, and just what that looks like and what you tell your group members.
I'm really excited about this episode because I love bundles and I love selling seasonal products. I think it's a huge opportunity on Amazon. We've had a number of people that are in our groups, that are in our courses, who have actually never sold private label products before, but have created their own unique bundles. And in particular, Nathan, I'm thinking of Nora, who created just a fantastic Easter bundle and just had tremendous sales. And that was the first bundle she ever made. What we're talking about here is it's almost like a poor man's private label, where you can come into a season like Easter or perhaps Mother's Day, Father's Day. Back to school bundles are excellent as well, where you can take name brand products and make your own unique bundle, get a UPC, and it's basically like your creation. And if you're smart enough, you can combine it with items that are hard to get, and then you're in the buy box 100% of the time. I love this idea. I think it's still huge opportunity. Not very many sellers do it, and it's a great way to get into the Amazon marketplace with a very private label like type product.
Yeah, so if someone's not quite ready for private label because they're nervous to import from overseas maybe, or they're not ready for that initial capital investment that most of the time you have to make with private label products, at least, getting a decent amount of units. Someone that's not ready for that, you think it's a good idea to maybe work their way up with this. And what I like about it is it gives you experience creating listings, right? You get experience creating listings, creating a good title and bullet points and search terms in the back end. You also get experience taking photos or having someone else take photos, because you can get professional photos done even for a seasonal bundle, or at least semi-professional done, and so that's good experience as well, right?
Yeah, I think of Nora, Nathan, who we helped. She had never made a bundle before, and she actually profited over $2,000 selling through her bundles 2 weeks before the high selling season time in Easter. And so you can imagine that, like every season, I think there's opportunity like that.
And Andy, I know I've heard you say this before in past videos that we've done. A lot of people know about bundles and know that they're a good opportunity, right? But most people do not take advantage of that opportunity. I think it's kind of like private label because it takes a little bit of work, right? You still have to create a listing and maybe take photos and get your products in and maybe assemble the bundle together yourself. So it does take a little bit of work. It's not for the lazy seller necessarily, but like you just mentioned, someone in our group who took advantage of an opportunity of a seasonal product last year was able to profit over $2,000. For most of us, that's still a good, product or listing that they made. Now, LIRAN, what would you say to someone that's looking at making a seasonal bundle? They might not know how many units to make, like how many bundled units to make, or how to even approach a seasonal listing. Maybe it's private label. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bundle, but how would you recommend that someone that's a little bit newer to this, how do they approach a seasonal product the first time that they're looking to do one?
Yeah, so I think a good way to do it, obviously, is to already see what's on Amazon. So probably already a couple months before the season, you'll start already seeing the listing. So you still have an opportunity to see what other people are doing and still get your seasonal bundle in. So, what I would tell somebody to do is to, one, most people underestimate, I think, the amount of units that they think they're going to sell, because what happens is as it gets closer to the season, sellers, just like a lot of people who underestimate, start going out of stock, and there's an opportunity to even raise prices and sell more units. So one, I would say, don't be shy or don't hold back on the amount of units that you do more than what you think is actually going to sell, because as it gets every day, as it gets closer to that season, especially if you think about the Amazon shopper, I just needed now to buy something that I need for Sunday, and I bought it yesterday on Amazon. Why? Because I know I can get it in 2 days shipping. So a lot of Amazon shoppers are going to buy only the last week before they actually need the product. So that's going to be a tremendous amount of demand during that time, and if you're out of stock, then you're not going to you're going to lose profit on that opportunity. So I would say one, and then two, look for the different opportunities within the season. So what I see a lot of sellers doing is, so for example, we just had Valentine's Day where people created bundles. We have Easter. They'll create one bundle, but that's a mistake. I think if you want to fully take advantage of the opportunity, I would invest in various types of bundles. So for example, if you're doing Easter, you can focus on one general type of Easter basket. You can also focus on a Easter basket for boys. You can focus on an Easter basket for girls. You can focus on an Easter basket that has only toys, one that has only treats. There's a lot of opportunities within those various niches to create multiple listings and really sell thousands of units during that season. I saw in Valentine's, again, a lot of people created one bundle, and who do they target? Women. Well, what about Valentine bundles for women to buy for men, right? With kind of like man type products that guys would want. So you want to kind of think outside the box a little bit, look on Amazon and think about who am I targeting, like almost like creating a unique profile of the person that I'm targeting. So this bundle is going to be, targeted towards, toddler girls ages 3 to 5. And then this bundle is going to target, boys ages 7 to 10, and put the products that marketplace, that market wants. And, you can figure out probably a lot of different opportunities.
All right, yeah, and I like those points that you made. For the typical Amazon shopper, I think that week to a week and a half before the actual event, whatever it is, the holiday or whatever it is, I think that's the prime selling time. And a lot of people will sell out before they even get to that prime selling time, where most of their sales might have occurred right in that couple of days. So it's kind of like, Christmas. More of us are familiar with like the Q4 or Christmas selling period, because that's kind of something that's been ingrained in our minds all these years. But with seasonal products, it's almost like a mini Q4 maybe throughout the rest of the year that you have to kind of think along those same guidelines. Now, I will say it can be kind of tough though, right? Like if your bundle is really specific to a season and you can't sell it afterwards, like after that season is done, if you're left with units left over, you're kind of stuck with them. Do you have any advice for us on what your approach would be? If you did overestimate, and you say most people underestimate, but what would you say if that did happen?
So if you overestimated and you had more units, there's different ways that you can move that product after. So potentially you can rename the title as just like a gift type basket and sort of try to market it a little bit differently with a different title, like just as a gift basket, for example. You can also recall that inventory and redo it for for the next season for a Mother's Day basket, right? You could take that same Easter basket that you had maybe a lot of candy, for example, and turn that into a Mother's Day basket. You might have to, or Valentine's Day for the future, but let's say after Easter, Mother's Day, but you'd probably need to recall that inventory and sort of redo it, or just cut the price and try to move it because you already made your profit and just break even and get out of it, which is probably what I would do rather than doing all the work of bringing back inventory. But I think most people do underestimate. So I would just say do more than what you think. And then as you do your first seasonal bundle, you'll kind of learn what type of demand there is. And, for the next round for that year, you'll know better in terms of, the amount to calculate.
Yeah, again, good points. I think if you had chocolate in it, we'll just use that for example, you do have to be aware that there's a cutoff date for chocolate being in the warehouse too. That's something to consider. So you do want to move those units, but you could potentially target, just someone a chocolate gift basket, right? And even if it's not specific to the season, people like chocolate all year, right? Especially if you discount it. So that might be, something that you can do as well there. So yeah, those are all great points. Now, Andy, we've been talking about kind of seasonal poor man private label bundles, as you put it, up until this point. But let's switch the feel a little bit here and talk about actual private label seasonal products. So these are products that are all your own private label brands that you're typically importing from China or somewhere overseas. What's kind of your thought process on that? Do you feel the same way? And how would you approach that any differently? Just give us your thoughts on that
Sure.
topic.
I mean, if you look at any of the big box stores, every season they have, where they're changing out inventory. And so a lot of times they start, a couple months before you think they would start. So if you walk into a Walmart, a lot of times if you go into the lawn and garden section of Walmart, that's where they store all of their inventory that they're changing out, right? And so seasonal inventory are huge sellers across the board. Same on Amazon. And so I have a seasonal product. It sells really well about 6 to 7 months out of the year. This particular product that I'm thinking about, I'll sell probably north of 500,000 in gross sales. This is one product, and it's primarily a seasonal product. And so, if you look, there are a number of products, in various categories that are seasonal type items that still sell really well. Because at the end of the day, really, right, it's all about the sales velocity. And so if you can find a product that's going to sell at a good velocity like mine, north of 500,000 gross sales, that's a great product.
All right. And some people might be thinking, if you sell a product maybe 3 to 6 months out of the year only, and the rest of the year, it's not really generating a lot of sales. How are you trying to forecast that inventory? Are you still trying to keep some units in stock the rest of the year? Or will you maybe let your listing kind of go dead or inactive for a little bit and try to bring it back the next year if you feel like it? What's been your approach on that in the past?
So again, it depends on where you're at experience wise. And, as private label sellers, when you first bring your product to market, a lot of times you don't know how fast that sales velocity is going to be. And so there is a little bit of guesswork going on. Generally now, at my level and with my expertise, I have a pretty good feel of how many units I'm going to go through. I typically now recommend, with people that are in our course, when we're evaluating their product, we can kind of get an idea. And so we'll tell them, look, we think for this first order, you should probably order around 500 units. or you should order maybe around 1,000 units. But even then, sometimes we miss. So I think about Todd Day with his product. He sold 1,000 units in 3 weeks. He went out of stock on. But generally after that first order, you're going to kind of have an idea of what your supply chain is going to be and how many you need to order and what you'll do with those.
So are you comfortable letting if you're outside of your peak season for maybe this particular product you're thinking of that you have, are you comfortable letting that listing go dead for a little bit, like having no units in stock, or would you try to keep at least some units even in the off season?
Yeah. So
or does it just depend on the product?
Yeah, it just depends on the product. But like with this one, we keep units in stock all year round, and it still sells. It'll sell maybe 1 to 2 per day instead of the 20 to 25 that it sells peak season.
Gotcha. And obviously this is a pretty good selling product, 500,000 maybe estimated annual revenue. So you might, for our listeners, they might have to adjust that down to whatever their particular product is, but that gives us a good feel, at least if you can maybe keep your listing going throughout the rest of the year, if it makes sense, if people are still buying it. If different seasonal products get bought throughout the year a lot of times. I'm thinking even of like Christmas related products. People do like a Christmas in July thing. So I know a lot of people who have told me that they've sold Christmas decorations and Christmas trees and all kinds of Christmas stuff in July even. So you kind of have to think about those. You might think it's an off season in the middle of July for Christmas, but there's people who do order those items and you can't get a boost there. So that's something else you have to consider. So that's all good information, I think. Let's segue this talk into a little bit different theme here now. We've talked about kind of seasonality bundles. We've talked about private label seasonal items. LIRAN, now I want to talk about, kind of a selling philosophy of trying to go after really, really fast moving or high velocity selling units, or home run products, you might call them, right? Those products that you only have 1 or 2 products that are making you or that are generating $1 million in revenue a year. Maybe those are like the home run products, as opposed to what we like to refer to as singles or doubles, those products that might not sell a lot of units, but they, are kind of steady movers, and they're steady adding to your daily sales, right? So LIRAN, can you kind of walk us through how you approach this, just what your thought process is on this, and break it down for our listeners?
Yeah, so for sure. So I've gone after both types of opportunities. I definitely think that you shouldn't just try to go after, let's say super highly competitive areas, that, finding various niches on Amazon where you think you can sell, 5 to 10 units a day, or 3 to 6 units a day. I think it's still okay if you know to anticipate that, right? So your goal isn't to order, 5,000 units, and then, it ends up happening that you're only selling a few a day. But, maybe you're finding an area that is going to be super easy for you to just get traction because there's not a lot of competition. There's some demand on Amazon. You can easily launch a product and sell, a few units a day, 3 to 5 units a day. If I know I'm going to generate, $4,000 or $5,000 a month, let's say, I'm okay with that. If I know that going in, and again, I didn't anticipate a home run with the product. And, if you can put together sort of a portfolio of these types of products in low competition areas on Amazon, I think that's definitely something worth pursuing, because these are going to be areas that a lot of other sellers overlook. So, as an example, you might be looking at an accessory for a branded item, right? So you have, let's say, an electronics item, let's say, or let's say you have an item for let's say windshield wipers for Ford vehicles, right? So, people are looking specifically only for that wiper because it fits that type of Ford vehicle, but there's people looking for it. They're already typing in the brand name, and you can easily come up. There's only 3 or 4 other sellers, and you're going to sell, 5 units a day. I say go for it.
And that main product, right, might be a home run product for another seller. But if they're established and they got more capital, more, a bigger seller, it might be tough to compete with them. So instead of trying to go in for that home run product, you might bring that accessory, like you just mentioned, that single or double, that is not necessarily a home run product where you're selling $100,000 worth a month, but you're generating a steady sales amount. And LIRAN, I really like this concept because both you and I have a financial background a little bit, right? So we're used to that portfolio talk about building a portfolio of products in this case instead of like stocks or bonds in the financial world. And really, what the buzzword in the financial world, right, is diversity, right? So when you bring several different products in, you kind of diversify your Amazon account a little bit, because even if one product, maybe the ASIN gets suspended, or just competition comes in that you weren't expecting, or whatever happens, the whole niche gets shut down by Amazon for one reason or another. All those things can kind of be diversified a little bit if you have this approach where you're trying to bring several units into the marketplace instead of just focusing all your attention on one or two big products, right?
It's like, what would you rather have? One product that sells 50,000 a month, or 5 products that sell 50,000 a month. And you could say that 5 products are better because, again, you have less risk of just that product being saturated, competition coming in, being blocked, etc. So you could say 5 products generating 50,000 a month is better than one product. And again, you're starting to build up this portfolio of products, and you're diversifying your risk, just like you said. And also based on that data, you could start seeing additional opportunities within those categories, and then try to go after more competitive type of areas. But yeah, I agree. It's good to have a portfolio of products that, and again, that's also with going out of stock, and there's lots of benefits to having a portfolio of products rather than, let's say, just 1 or 2 products.
Good. All right. Yeah. Good points, LIRAN. So, Andy, at this point of your Amazon selling career, and I know, again, this is going to be different for everyone, but you personally, when you're looking at a new product to bring to the marketplace, are you kind of looking at a minimum number of sales a month that you like to see? I know you don't always know, but when you're kind of forecasting and you think you're going to be able to sell at least X number of units a month, do you kind of have a minimum at this point, or what does that look like for you?
So I know a lot of people do. I don't. I really just look at the amount of competition, the amount of demand. I really don't project how many units I'm going to be able to sell per month. And I often tell people this. I have some products where I only profit on this ASIN $400 a month. That's my net profit. So it's not a huge amount of sales, but I'm okay with that. So that's what I call like a single. It's on autopilot. I'm able to send in, 400 units every 4 or 5 months, and I really don't have to do anything. And then that's, $400. I mean, for some people, that would be a car payment. Thankfully, all of my cars are paid off, but $400. And when you add that up across the board, and so, say you have 20 products that are netting you $400 a month that you don't have to do much with, that are on autopilot, that's a really good business model.
Gotcha. So, and I know I've heard you say this oftentimes, and I think this applies to most areas of life, right? It's kind of like the 20-80 rule, right? When you're bringing products to the marketplace, you might bring 10 products, and typically if you follow the 20-80 rule, 2 of those products are going to probably be quite a bit better than the other ones, right? Like 80% of your sales might be made up by just your top 2 products in that case. And on the other spectrum of it, the bottom 20% of the products might almost be doing nothing, right? So I know I've heard you say that in the past. Do you still feel like that kind of applies to all the various products that you've brought to the marketplace?
Absolutely. I always forget who came up with that 80-20 rule, but that pretty much applies to everything in life. And it definitely does for my Amazon account, where 20% of my products generate 80% of the revenue. But again, you never know which one of those products is going to end up in the 20%. And that's why, this, we are always throwing new products into the Amazon river in hopes that they might become part of that 20%. Generally, right, we try to find products that are going to be home run products. We think they are. If they end up being singles, we're okay with that. But you always have to be throwing new products right into the river, into the Amazon catalog, because you never know which one of those might end up as that 20% generating 80% of the revenue.
And I think a good thing to, a good motivation and a reason to keep moving forward with that is, I've heard you say this before, Andy, if you're not, even if you start doing well and your sales are moving along really, really well and you're generating a great profit, you might start to get kind of complacent, right? You start to feel too comfortable, and then you're not looking to bring new products. You're not driving forward. Is that something that you see happen often, something that happens to you? And what would be your advice for that?
Yeah, I mean, that's it's a real danger selling on the Amazon platform, because at times it could seem so easy because they generate so much traffic and they have so many customers. It really does get to the point where if you want to sit on the couch and just keep checking your sales every day, it can be really tempting, as opposed to, in fact, just recently, so Amazon has a seller app. I had to take that app off of my phone because I caught myself checking my sales too much instead of looking for new products to throw into the Amazon catalog. And I knew it was a bad habit. I was getting too happy with my sales instead of staying hungry and putting more products in. So I had to take it off my phone.
That's funny. And LIRAN, I'm going to ask you the same question, because for as long as I've known you, which hasn't been super long, but for as long as I've known you, you have never, I would never describe you as complacent. You're always someone who's striving to better yourself and to move forward, just very motivated. So I'm going to ask you the same question. How do you keep yourself from staying complacent? Maybe you don't struggle with it as much as the rest of us, but just give us some advice on that as well.
Well, I think you need to, the first thing I think you need to recognize is that there may or may not be a certain life cycle to the products that you currently have on Amazon. It's possible, I know, I have products that for my first products that I started are still doing well, but then you see products that start to trend, might trend downwards over some time as competition comes in. So if you are just sitting back, then you might turn around and time flies by, and 2 years from now, your sales are less because you got into some categories where just more competition came in. You were complacent. You didn't do the work in making your listings better, making improvements, bundling with new things or adding new products to that brand, and kind of growing your sort of name on Amazon for those products. Where your sales start moving backwards if you get too complacent, your competition's going to come in and beat you. I mean, one of the things that I look to do constantly is, how can I make not only bring in new products, but how can I make my existing products and listings better and better than my competition? So some things that I've done recently is add enhanced brand content. Right now I have 11 products on their way to a new photographer to add lifestyle photos that are going to be, they're going to be better. I just had a professional copywriter write, new titles and bullet points for some of my products. So, I think complacency, I guess life philosophy is that if you're not growing, you're dying. You're not really, if you're not doing anything, it's not like you're staying in the same place. You're actually moving backwards because there's other people that are moving ahead. So, my motivation is, to me, I love selling on Amazon. I love the excitement that, getting up every day and working towards, a new product that you think is just a great idea, and improving my, things that get me excited are improving my conversion rates and my PPC campaigns doing better. And, it gets me excited ultimately because it's a good feeling to have that love, that success with your products and see it. And, I get a fulfillment out of it. Obviously it also makes it more profitable. And so that's, exciting also. But to me, I think you have to be passionate about what you're doing. And, I know Andy, you, myself, we're very passionate about selling on Amazon. And so that drives passion to bring in new products and make our existing listings, existing listings and new products just better. So that's kind of my philosophy on why you shouldn't just, sit back.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's a really cool look at some of Andy and LIRAN's personal insights on these topics today, and some of the opportunities that are pretty much available to all of us who are willing to put in some work, get a little creative, and make things happen. Hey, don't forget, you can register for our new free private label course by visiting amazingfreedom.com/smart for an easy to follow video series on private label. And if you have questions that you'd like us to answer on a future podcast episode, you can go ahead and ask us those by visiting amazingfreedom.com/ask. That's going to do it for this episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes. And hey, if you don't mind, it'd be awesome if you could just take a minute and leave us a review on iTunes if you are finding these shows helpful to you. Catch more next time and keep working to grow your Amazon business.
You've been listening to the Amazon Seller Podcast. Make sure to subscribe and join us next time for another look at how to dominate the Amazon marketplace.